So you're at a loss for words. You're at a loss for words. One of life's tragic events has left you speechless. An old friend shares inappropriately one of your most intimate secrets, and you're taken aback by the betrayal. You can't sleep. And you swing your legs from beneath the covers at night, and your feet find the floor, and you shuffle from the bedroom into the kitchen. You open the refrigerator door, and you find your severed, frozen head. And then you wake up. You've been dreaming, thank God. But you remember that in the dream, there was this amazing, wordless moment. You were shocked. I don't know why it is exactly, but it seems to me the most important moments in our lives are the lives when words fail us. I don't know why it is, but as much as our everyday lives, our conscious day and night experience is about words, right, and how words just bombard us all the time, we often run out of them at the inopportune moment. Or we often reach for the most available words when a more appropriate or a more adequate or a more authentic word might have come if we just waited for it. We say the wrong things at the wrong time. We spoil these moments that might have been better left a pregnant silence. Once upon a time, there was a little boy named Saru who lived in a poor village in central India through which the trains ran day and night. One night, Saru, this little boy, convinced his older brother to take him for work, where work consisted of stealing little pieces of coal from the train and then reselling them in the village. This is the story of a film called Lion, a recent film, and it's based upon actual events. And to make a long story short, Saru, this little child, falls asleep on a train, and he finds himself transported miles and miles away from his familiar home. And he wakes up in Bangladesh, where eventually he's shipped with other orphans to a home. And then from there, he's adopted by two parents from Australia. Now, the sad part, of course, about this story is that Saru is not an orphan. The good part is that he's raised by loving parents in Australia, and flash forward 20 years, and there he is, this bright, well-adjusted human being, Saru, and he's speaking English, and everybody loves him, and he's going off to school in Melbourne, Australia. He's visiting with friends, and he's chit-chatting and having a great conversation, and he goes into the kitchen to grab another beer. Do you want one? Do you want another beer? Sure, I'll get you one. And there in the kitchen is this tray of Indian desserts called jalebis, or jalebis. And without warning, after seeing these desserts, these Indian desserts, his mind is suddenly flooded with these ancient memories. And he remembers his older brother, Gadu, and how they joked before everything happened, how they had joked about they were going to buy all the jalebis in the village. At the time, they couldn't afford even one. But the adult Saru grabs one of the pieces of brown sweetness and he bites it, and he's at a loss for words. And the friends come in and they say, "Are you okay?" And he's just in a trance. Now, over the course of these last few weeks in October, I've talked with you about the Missio Dei, the mission of God. And the overarching thesis has been that you and I imaginatively, metaphorically, and maybe quite literally, are like the sent apostles. Apostle literally means sent one. And the disciples in this part of Luke's gospel are often referred to as apostles. Right? It's kind of an interesting move that Luke is trying to make. He's trying to say they've graduated from mere apostles, now they're sent ones. And this missional imagination applies to us. How? Well, we can start to imagine ourselves as being sent to a family, your family, sent to our workplaces, right? Sent to all these mundane, everyday experiences. Instead of just looking at them as ordinary things, well, here I am once again on my job, making money. Here I am with the same old family, la 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 la, right? Instead, look at it as an adventure. I was sent to this particular situation, to these particular people at this particular time. And it seems to me that fires our imaginations, that lifts us out of the ordinary and gives us extraordinary lives. But there's something that I haven't told you, and it is the following. Here we go. First of all, it matters whom you and I say Jesus is. It just does. Is Jesus the Messiah of God? Is he the anointed one of God? That matters, first. And second, if he is the Messiah, whatever that means, is more than we can say. Two things. First, it matters who we say Jesus is, and if we say he's the Messiah, it's actually more than we can say, right? Not long ago, after writing the novel that made him famous, Truman Capote traveled to the hanging, the capital punishment hanging of the two main characters in his nonfiction work. Do you remember In Cold Blood, right, by Truman Capote? And it was a work, it was a strange piece of literature because it was nonfiction, meaning it was based on real events, but it was told with fictional technique, right? So it seemed like you were reading a fictional account. And what Capote did was describe the inner thoughts and feelings of both the Herbert Clutter family in Kansas, all four of whom were murdered, and the inner thoughts and feelings of the two confessed killers, Perry Smith and Dick Hickok. Well, after the 1959 killings and after the state execution, Capote sat down for an interview, and the interviewer asked him a few questions, namely this question: how did these two criminals accept that you used them as subjects for your book? And Capote said, I'm not going to try to imitate his voice, they had no idea what I was going to do. Well, of course, at the end they did. Perry was always asking me, why are you writing this book? What is it supposed to mean? I don't understand why you're doing it. Tell me in one sentence why you would want to write this book. So I would say that it didn't have anything to do with changing the reader's opinion about anything, nor did it have any moral justification. It was just a strictly aesthetic theory of creating a book that would be a work of art. And Capote emphasized, a work of art. That's really the truth, Perry, I'd tell him, and Perry would say, a work of art? A work of art? How ironic. My whole life, that's what I wanted to do. Create a work of art, and here I killed 4 people, and you're going to produce a work of art. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is, for me, and I hope for you, that's more than we can say. Truman Capote is telling what Perry Smith, this confessed killer, could not say in his life. He's trying to give his life, not a justification for the murder, but he's trying to give his life context, right? And the context matters. The context gives us a sense of sympathy. It could have been us. We could have been the killers. And just imagine what Truman Capote missed. Truman Capote could say a lot more about Perry Smith and Dick Hickok, but just imagine what he missed in Christ. He could have missed something larger, not just the story of how these guys killed this family in cold blood, but their forgiveness. That might be more than we can say. Who do the crowds say that I am? It seems like Jesus is taking a poll. And at first blush, right, it might be as if Jesus is relishing his popularity, right? Some say John the Baptist, others one of the prophets, and so forth and so on. And wow, what a rush, right? Just imagine, who do the people say that I am? And they're listing all these great religious icons in Hebrew history. And yet for Jesus, it's just the words of the crowd. It's too easy, too simple. You know about crowds, don't you? October, as Jim and I know, is the culmination of baseball season. And as I write this, the Chicago Cubs have lost their bid for the National League pennant for a second year in a row. And it's sad. I was rooting for them. But do you remember the days of the curse? It wasn't that long ago. October 2003, the Cubs were also in the playoffs, and they were playing the Florida Marlins, and they were winning in the 6th or 7th inning, 3-2, and they were outs away from going to the World Series when Luis Castillo hit a foul ball in Wrigley Field, and it was going into left field, and then it went over into foul territory, and the fans all lunged for the ball, and the Cubs outfielder Moises Alou was reaching into the stadium ready to catch the ball, and one of the Cubs fans, you can hardly blame him, this guy, Steve Bartman, reached and knocked his glove and deflected the ball. Holy hell! That nice, pleasant Chicago town turned venomous, and they just looked at that guy and they just said, "You're gonna die! You're gonna die!" And Alou had missed the catch, and everyone booed, and suddenly, I just couldn't believe this happened, all the Florida Marlins hitters got hit after hit after hit, and they won the game 8-3. And they blamed that guy, Steve Bartman. Now, what's a good part of this story is when the Cubs won the World Series last year, they gave to Steve Bartman one of the World Series balls. Crowds, you see, are fickle. Crowds go from cheer to jeer. As soon as you can say, "Lock her up," or "Drill, baby, drill," crowds are on the move. And I am convinced that Jesus, in Luke chapter 9, he understands the crowd. He understands that it doesn't matter. What does matter? Who do you say that I am? But check this out. As soon as Jesus asks that question, "Who do you say that I am?" and as soon as he gets the reply, "You are the Messiah of God," the very next verse, he sternly orders them to say nothing to anyone. Shut up. Shh. It's as if the fantastic irony of the faith we share is more than we can say. It's as if we just throw out a bunch of words, we degrade the message. There are times when silence will do, or when a stumbling articulation of the gospel, when that will be enough. Because we're pointing to ultimate truth. We're not just pointing to, hey, I like your lawn. I know when I'm teaching philosophy, one of the strangest dichotomies is when I try to explain to the students the difference between the word sunset and an actual sunset. It's the simplest thing, right? I can say to you, sunset, and I can describe for you the light caressing the blues of the ocean and the sky, but if you're not there, right, it pales in comparison.